The second rebellion again in Russia. Putin's biggest opponent is different. What will be the fate of Putin's iron-fisted rule for 23 years? After the armed revolt caused by Evgeny Prigozhin, the head of Wagner Group, a Russian mercenary company, the West's greatest interest can be summarized as follows. Western major foreign media and various think tanks are making various observations about the future of Russia President Vladimir Putin, who's facing the worst crisis. The spectrum ranges from the perspective of predicting the end of Putin's regime to the expectation that Putin's authoritarian rule will intensify. Liana Fix, a European researcher of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, and Michael Kimaja, history professor at the Catholic University of America, published an article titled The Beginning of the End of Putin in Foreign Affairs magazine on the 27th, focused on cracks. Whatever Prigozhin's motives and intentions, his rebellion exposed serious vulnerabilities in Putin's regime, they said. Then attention was paid to the possibility of a second Prigozhin incident. Prigozhin's rebellion may be the first major challenge to Putin's regime, but it will not be the last. They also said Putin's power base was pro-Putin tendencies, or at least the passive Russian people. On this solid foundation, Putin has maintained a structure of factional competition between elites and national security forces, he said, comparing the governance structure centered on President Putin to a house of cards. He warned that Putin could move his pieces skillfully and stand on top of everything like a chess master for years, but someone threw the chessboard with me, he said. It may not be. Hudson Institute senior research fellow Luke Coffey took a similar view. In an article titled Washington Needs to Prepare for Russian Chaos, published in Foreign Policy, he said the Russian military rebellion has been withdrawn, but the drama is not over yet. It showed that everything is possible, including the downfall of Putin and civil war in Russia. In particular, Coffey pointed out a few foreseeable situations, such as a case of independence or autonomy claims appearing throughout Russia, saying American policymakers must prepare for various scenarios. On the 28th, U.S. President Joe Biden said, "Of course, when asked by a reporter, do you think this rebellion has weakened Putin's power?" In the process, the aged President Biden, 80 years old now, made a mistake. He said Putin is clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's also losing a domestic war, he said. He misrepresented the Ukraine war, which occurred during the Russian invasion, as the war in the Iraq war. However, there are still many cautions that it's too early to draw any hasty conclusions about the future of Putin's rule in the Kremlin. The Washington Post said on the same day the aftermath of the armed rebellion and chaos over the weekend has jeopardized Russia's image by shaking many assumptions about Putin's dictatorial power and Russia's stability. Analysts caution that it's still too early to say how severely Putin's position has been weakened in the current situation. In this regard, U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken said in an interview with Richard Haass, chairman of the Council of Foreign Relations, CFR, that day that the last episode showing the internal aspects of the failure caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, armed rebellion, suggests many things, but where does this go? It's difficult to predict whether it will go or when it will reach the end. In an attempt to restore Putin's damaged leadership and authority, there are prospects that he could tighten internal control more than before and forcefully suppress critics. Putin survived, said Alexander Gubev, director of the Carnegie Center for Russia and Eurasia. It shows that nobody in Russia is really ready to challenge Putin. In the end, there are observations that it will be Russian public sentiment that determines the direction of Putin's regime. Elizabeth Shackelford, a former U.S. diplomat and now a member of the Chicago Global Affairs Committee, noted that it was ordinary Russians who proved vulnerable to the damages of the war, and they were not in a hurry to support or confront Prigozhin's rebellion. It's no longer a question of whether Putin will outlast the West or whether the West will outlive Putin, Shackelford said. It will be a fight, as he stressed. And this is by correspondent Kim Hyun-gu, on Jungang, and I've translated this for you from a Korean or Chinese article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.